You are about to experience Jackson Snyder Presents To Eat or Not to Eat? That is the question. Featuring Ela Connor and her new method of learning the exegesis of the Hebrew language that we call Action Hebrew. Hello, my friends. This is Jackson Snyder. I'm so happy to introduce to you today Ela Connor, aficionado of healthy foods, protector of healthy bodies, and proprietor of a brand new method of interpreting Hebrew that you can learn. So do we eat or do we not? Shall we have the creeping thing for lunch? Or the bloody thing? Or shall we just eat cake? This is what we're going to find out on today's episode of Jackson Snyder Presents. Entitled appropriately, Does We Eat the Goat?
Are you gonna eat that? 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 Are you gonna eat that?
And I'm gonna put that Strong's number in, H7489. So you'll hear people go, oh, don't use Strong's. There's a lot of value with Strong's because they have a great numbering system. So don't throw it out. Use it for what it is. And their definitions aren't bad. I mean, we saw that it means to be bad. So I'm going to go to that. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to put that Strong's number in, H7489. So you'll hear people go, oh, don't use Strong's. There's a lot of value with Strong's because they have a great numbering system. So don't throw it out. Use it for what it is. And their definitions aren't bad. I mean, we saw that it means to be bad. So I'm going to go to that Strong's number. I use this as a second witness. I love what I find out. So I go in here, and the first time we see it is in Vero Sheet 19:7, and said, I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly. I find that fascinating. I'm going, okay, so evil, what's Yahweh telling us? He says, not to do it. Don't do it. Yahweh said, I pray you, brethren, don't do it. So I just play with it for that reason. Now, there's another thing you can do with this when you're looking at the gematria. If I go down in here, and I know the gematria of Ra'ah is 340, so the value of those letters is 340, and I put in the 340, it's going to take me to the word shum. In Hebrew, letters get dropped for specific reasons. I'm not going to go into that, but this particular one got dropped, and I just happen to know that it's a shin, a wa, and a mem, and that word is to place or arrange, and it takes you to, if you look at the first occurrence of the word shum, it's, and Yahweh Elohim planted a garden in Eden to the east, and there he put the man whom he formed, and so we see that the man is placed in the garden, and then when we see the occurrence of evil in that Vero Sheet 2:9, we see that the tree of evil was also placed in the garden. So we kind of see some pieces. So evil, it has been placed in the garden, and so has man. So that's kind of what I do with a little bit of that. We would need to go further, but I'm just trying to show you how I think beautiful Hebrew is and some of the things that you can do with it to see what Yahweh is trying to show us. So evil is basically breaking into pieces. Now, the opposite of evil, so as we walk our walk, we have to try to make sure that everywhere we go, we're not trying to break things into pieces. We're not trying to break somebody's heart into pieces. We're not trying to break our own body down into pieces. We're not trying to there's so many ways you can look at that. So I like to see what is he trying to tell me? What is it? How does my walk work? How should it look? Do my words break into pieces another person, which is the breaking the heart? So then I want to go, well, what's the opposite of evil? Well, to me, it would be righteousness. You could say toe, but I guess I looked at it as righteousness. So I thought, well, what does it mean to be righteous? So I go in and I'm going to put in righteous. And the first time we see it is in Bereshit 7:1. That's Genesis, Bereshit. And it says, and Yahweh said unto Noah, come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee I have seen righteous. So Noah is an example of righteousness. I thought that was really cool. So I look back and I look at Noah's life and I go, So that would be somebody I could model and strive to be like if I want to emulate righteousness. Go and say, okay, well, how is Noah righteous? Well, he was obedient. When Yahweh said, build an ark, he said, okay, they're going to think I'm crazy, but I'll do it. And it was a hard task. It took him a long time, but because of his righteousness, and it's an action, he did it anyway. And sometimes being righteous doesn't mean it's going to be as smooth as we see in the scriptures. So then I kind of did the same thing. And also, so that's Strong's. So let's look at what Strong says on the meaning of righteous. I'm going to go down here, and it's H6662, and I'm going to go for the root, because in Hebrew, they add vowels, and they'll add prefixes and suffixes to change it into an adverb or an adjective, or they'll drop things to turn it into a noun. So I want to look for the root. I want to find out what is it that I'm supposed to do to be righteous. And Strong says to be just, to be righteous. That's very acceptable. I think we'd all agree with that. And if I go to this book right here, it says satisfy or to have objective justice. So the action of tzaddik is to have objective justice. We can't do what's right in our own eyes. So we see they're kind of similar in what they're saying. And then I like to play with it a little further. So I go over here and I put my Strong's number in, 6662, 6663. Right. So let's see what they say for where we see the, actually no, I think I did this different. So I'm going to go down here. I was going to do the gematria. So the gematria of righteous, tzaddik, is 194. So I'm going to put that in there. I want to see an equivalent word for righteous. And I thought this was interesting. I got to meditate on this for a little bit. And sometimes that's what I'll do. The verse that comes up, or the word that comes up, is Sidon, not Sion, but Sidon. And in that particular passage, it was actually talking about, this just shows you that they also use the Strongs. He's got it set up, so you could actually do the Strongs in here too. It was talking about, I should probably go there and just read it. The borders of the Canaanites. And we know that the righteous people had to displace the Canaanites. So it was the righteous people that Yahweh said, you're going to go into the land where the Canaanites live, and you're going to take that from them. Correct me if I'm remembering that incorrectly. And I thought that's odd. I go, so righteous is equal to 194. The first word that equals 194 was the Sidon, and we see that was talking about where the Canaanites lived, and we know that Yehoshua, son of Nun, and Caleb had to go there and take the people and take over that land. So I saw a tie in there. That's a little bit about how I kind of look at the Hebrew language and why I think it's so beautiful. And it's where I go to try to figure out how to walk it out. So the righteous people, the ones that live in righteousness are satisfying the objective justice of Yahweh. The ones that are doing evil are not necessarily people that are doing bad things like we think that you end up in jail over, but it could be me, it could be you, it could be us as an assembly being evil, and he doesn't want that to dwell in his place. So when you're doing your studying, these are a couple of tools that I use for looking at it. We can also look at the paleo. So if we were to take the word evil, which is the resh, ayin, the resh can be the head. The ayin is the perception or the understanding of when you're looking out. It's related to the eye. Let's see if it would back up breaking into pieces. You have the resh can also represent the wicked one. Here's where it can get kind of frustrating sometimes, is that there's a lot of people that tell you what the paleo represents. I have this chart right here that says the resh means the head, but it also can mean the wicked one. So that's probably why resh is used for evil. The wicked one sees and understands maybe what the adversary is up to. You've got, Jackson's got a chart from Eric Bissell, and he looks at, let's see, what does he say the resh is? He's doing the real, what do you call the paleo that's really ancient? Phoenician. He does the Phoenician, right? Yeah.
There's three different lines.
So Eric Bissell looks at the Beresh as our noble, exalted in the sky. So that's the positive side of the letter, because people say in Hebrew there's a positive and there's a curse side. So we can look at both of those things. Those that don't break in pieces are looking to the one elevated in the sky. I have so many different things, and when you go into the Hebrew and you're looking at how are you going to understand it. Another one, I can't remember who this one came from. The resh can represent headship. We should receive wise spiritual headship over our families. You could say, well, evil is not the exercise of wise spiritual headship over our families. You could look at it that way. I know we want to do questions at the end, but I also wanted to make this working, so I'm curious to see what you guys are thinking evil and righteous represents when we're looking at this. Does this resonate with you that this would be a fair representation of what evil and righteousness would be in our walk? Does the Hebrew language back that up? Okay, but so let's take this back to the scriptures, to the Hebrew language. Do we see a definition that says there's different levels of evil?
Yes.
Because we all think sin is evil, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at sin. So the first time we see sin is in Bereshit 4:7, when Cain was, Yahweh was talking to him saying, well, why are you so upset? Why you got a bad attitude? So let's look at sin and the difference between that and evil. So first time we see that sin is when he's talking to Cain, and the Strong says that sin is to sin, to miss the way, go wrong, incur guilt. I'm going to check out another dictionary, miss the mark. You have to wonder, okay, so Yahweh gives us two different words, one for sin and one for evil. And evil is breaking in pieces and doing something bad. And then he says, these things that you do, if you do them this way, they're sin. So why does he give us two words? What is the difference between that and evil? So that's a het, tet. There's also one other thing I'll point out. I haven't done a lot of work with this. The order of the letters in a word. There's one that you don't see a combination of the two letters ever together, and I can't remember what it is. But you'll also notice that certain letters aren't placed next to each other. There's two that are never placed next to each other, but it's something different. So we've got a het, tet, and an aleph. Removed from source of life. So we look at sin and we think, well, that's evil. Sin is evil. So we break up something in pieces, that's sin, and then it removes us from the source of life. So these are the things that I love about the Hebrew language. I'm going, wow, if I break things into pieces, if I do things sins. And I don't repent because Yeshua tells us that all we have to do is repent, sincerely repent, and our sins are wiped as far as the east is from the west. So if I live in, if I break things into pieces, then I'm removed. It becomes a sin. I'm removed from the source of life. I don't want that. And one of the first things that Yeshua said was, I think it was the first thing he said, repent for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. So let's play with this a little bit. So the chet, tet, aleph, just if I call to memory, the chet is the fence. And it can be a fence that keeps bad out. It can be a fence that keeps the good in. And when we are within the Torah or within the Word, however you want to look at that, that's a fence around us to protect us. He calls the Word a sword. So the chet is the fence. You can look at it as your glass is half full or your glass is half empty. I like the half full. So the chet is a fence that keeps bad away from me. The tet is they say a basket or like a womb. Some people will say it's like a womb, but it's a basket that holds, I think, the good things of Yahweh in. And then the aleph is been known to be thought of as the leader. So I'm not even sure how we put that together. The fence maybe protects the basket of what's good and of who's our head, those things from the Word. So you can play with those things like that and let the Ruach show you what the power of his Hebrew language is and the meaning of the letters. I don't, Jackson, does the Greek language do that? So when you look at a Greek letter, does it have a meaning to it?
Yeah, well, it has a numeric.
A numeric, so that's what the Hebrew does. Right, but that's a combination, but does like each letter, would it say that the chet is a fence? You could take the Septuagint then and look at the value of the letter and then find where it takes you. You could do the same thing with the Bible wheel where you go in there and you find, I'm going to go in here and look for sin and see what we do. So this is Strong's 2398. Let's go see what it says here. So the first time we see sin, H2398, is in, and Elohim said unto him in a dream, Yea, I know that thou didst this in the integrity of thy heart, for I also withheld thee from sinning against me, therefore suffer I thee not to touch her. Interesting. I think it all ties together. I think everything in the Word, I used to tend to isolate different passages and just believe that I was just looking at it. But I just see how everything is so intertwined. And to me, it backed up that man couldn't have written it. It has to be from the creator of heaven and earth because of how intertwined it is. And I love that about the Hebrew language. And that tells me something right there when I look at, well, where is the first occurrence of sin? It helps define what that word means so that I can live it out. I want to embrace it. I actually go even further than that. So when I'm doing a word study, I go in and I look at the English too. I try to find out, well, what does the English mean? And I try to go to the oldest English dictionary I can find online because I want to understand, well, what does the English mean when I'm looking at that? Because that also has an impact on, because what I think sin means versus somebody else that uses the English version of it thinks sin is, it can be quite different. And then that's where we see a lot of times conflict occurs between people is because they're not communicating that, well, I'm looking at this from a different perspective. I have different experiences. It's like what Jackson was talking about yesterday. Our experiences determine our paradigm, and our paradigm can also keep us stuck. I love looking at all the different teachers out there. Brad Scott actually does a really good job with looking at the Hebrew language from an agricultural standpoint. Oh, it's so awesome when he looks at the agriculture, why did Yahweh use the word seed and offspring and house, all those things in the Hebrew language. If you ever get a chance to listen to Brad Scott, I think he would be a good one to take a look at more of the depth of what the word is trying to tell us than just focusing on the English. Personally, for me, if somebody's having a conversation with me and they are trying to express what they think the word means, I'll say, well, did you go back? Because the English is really somebody's perception of what it means. Just like, so if I was going to translate it, I'd be probably translating it different than somebody else. So now you're getting my opinion or my paradigm on the translation. And I want to make sure that whoever translated, whatever version I'm using, has translated it closest to the Hebrew language that I can see. So that's why I like going back into the Hebrew and using these tools and verifying. And I'll just give you a good example because we've been talking about this while we're here about whether we should be eating meat or not. So let's go and figure out if the Hebrew, and I understand Jackson says that the Masoretes have made a lot of errors in here, but as we saw yesterday, so has the Septuagint. It has errors too. Right, but it has errors. So all things have errors in them because their man is involved. So I like to go back and see what does the Hebrew say, what does the Masoretes say, and does it make sense in the context of things? And I'm hoping that the Ruach would show me. I haven't yet to see where the Masoretes have done that. I do want to know where those issues are. We've seen yesterday that the Septuagint changed the definition of the sea of reeds, but I actually don't think it's sea of reeds because when I was looking at it yesterday, it's sea of limit. The sea of limit. But so then we have to go even further. We saw that was changed. And so now we're going to look at, well, should we be eating meat? So the first time we see in English where we think we're allowed to eat meat is after the flood. So he gets off the flood. Where's the flood? It is, okay, so Bereshit, Genesis 7. So we're going to go in here. Let's use our blue letter Bible. Let's see if we should be eating meat. Well, in Bereshit 1:29, he says, and Elohim said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which there is fruit of the tree yielding seed. To you it shall be meat. So in here we see clearly that it's plants, but he's saying that that's meat. And actually that word right here, achla, if we go in there and look at this, it's really just to consume. It's to eat. It's not meat, but the translators in a lot of the scriptures say meat. It should have said food. So when he first creates, he says plants are your food. That's our baseline. Yeah. Then we go, where do we see it change next? We're going to go to the next, let's see, every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you again. It's probably, we can go in here, it's probably a whole, which is to eat. Let's just see. And it is to eat, consume. You said it was Genesis, Bereshit 7. Here we go. It's 7:14. So King James, they and every beast after its kind, and all the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing after that creepeth upon the earth after its kind, and every fowl after its kind, every bird of every sort. It's actually 9:3.
9:3.
Yeah, Bereshit, Genesis 9:3. I have a hard time typing in the English. Okay, so in here it says every moving thing that liveth shall be, even as the green herb have I given you all things. But I find something curious. Before we even go in here, if we read this, and one of the things that we did wrong in the church when we were looking at Kepha, and he said that it was about we can eat whatever we want. If you actually go later in there, he explains what that really meant, but we isolate that and go, oh, it's okay to eat whatever we want, as we lived before. But if you actually go a little bit further, so I found it odd that he says, every moving creature that lives is food for you. I have given you all as the green plants, but do not eat flesh with its life, its blood. Kind of an odd combination. Why would he says every meat you can eat, and then right after that he says in English, but do not eat flesh with its life, its blood. So let's go in here and take a look at this word right here. And again, we have to go a little bit further in here. We're going to go every moving thing, because we assume, oh, that must mean animals. Let's go into that word and see what it says. Now, keep in mind the Masoretes did vowel points, so when Blue Letter Bible did this, you're going to see the first word with the vowel pointings, and then it's going to take you back to the root, which is the masculine version, and it's always done a certain way, and that's the root word. And when they do the vowel pointings, it changes the meaning of it from the root word. So in here, they're saying creeping things, moving things, creeping organisms, creeping, gliding things. Let's go to the root. We're going to go further. We want to see the action. And it also gets to say to creep, to move lightly, to move about, about. Now, here's why I don't always rely on Strong's. I'm going to go to this dictionary right here, the Etymological Dictionary of Biblical Hebrew. Look at it. So it's a resh, mem, and a sin. And yesterday when Jackson was talking about it, where that vowel pointing is determines if it's a sin or a shen. So this is a sin. So resh, mem. It means to tread softly. So something that treads softly. And we're going to go back. We're going to look at this a little bit. The other thing that Blue Letter Bible I want to point out does to you, if you look up top and you see where it says 9.3, it says kol remes asher hu chai.
As a favor to me, I wonder if you would smoosh that roach right over there looking at you.
No problem. Malbarfon.
Oj, den är klar och jag står väl som slår och några. Ni måste ha väffat.
The other thing that Blue Letter Bible I want to point out does to you, if you look up top and you see where it says 9.3, it says kol remes asher hu chai. So the kol, they don't bring down and break out the words. So when it says every moving thing, it gave you 3 words for the one Hebrew. What they did is they didn't put in the first word, which is kol, which means everything, all. Tell you that part. So they just added in there. That's another thing. You have to be very careful with the English translation. They add a lot of theys, amongs, and they're not in the scriptures. And if you go to English, this is what I did. I went to the English and I go, well, what does among mean? What does to mean? What does from mean? And you'd be amazed how it changes the context of what you're reading. Okay, so Deweed, I'm going to have you help me out. At the very top of that board, I want you to put kol, the very first Hebrew word, kol, which is the kaf lamed. Put the meaning. So the meaning of kol is complete by including everything. So that's huge right there. Complete by including everything. So that means all. That's comprehensive. All. That's the first word we see there. Then we're going to look at remes, and we said that remes is to tread softly, so put tread softly. The next word they left out in the little list there, it's asher, and so asher, the action of it, because we're looking for the action, so asher is progress, move forward. And it is generally translated as that which, usually that or which. But what does that really mean? So progress, move forward is the action of asher, and then the who is that's usually translated as it or he. Who is he is she. So that's he. I always have to remember that rule. So the who is, they usually will say it. And I'm going to actually go further than that, and I'm going to look at, well, what does who mean? He, normally translated. And that means, so it's a hey, wa, aleph. Hey, wa, aleph. That means to be, to exist. So next would be exist. This is going to be real raw. Then the next word after that, which is not in that, well, actually it is in the list. Chai. Everybody knows chai. Chai am, living people. Chai is life. I want to see what it's in this dictionary to be consistent. I'm going to go to chai. So a chet and a yod. Okay, there's a couple things with Hebrew that can get a little complicated. In Hebrew, if I'm trying to find a root word, that can be sometimes difficult. And it takes a long time to figure out how to really get through that root, trying to find a root of a word. So chai, you see in there, is 2 letters. And so I got to try and figure out, well, what's the root? So there's 2 ways I do that. There's a rule that where a hey gets dropped off, and then there's a rule where the last letter gets doubled, okay? So I'm going to look at both to kind of see where my context speaks. So if I take chai and I go chet, yod, that means to encircle quickly, to move actively due to inner drive. So that doesn't really match up with so much life. And then I'm going to look at what a chet yod hey is, because a hey it's called a clipped form. It'll get dropped off. And if I go to a chet yod hey, it means live by virtue of Elohim's thoughts. So let's just take this for now. So to chai means to live by virtue of Elohim's thoughts. So that's going to go next.
Are Are you gonna eat that? Are you gonna eat? Are you gonna eat that? Are you gonna eat that? Are you gonna eat? Are you gonna eat that? Are you gonna eat that? Are you gonna eat? Are you gonna eat that?
So let's go back to, we're trying to figure out how to use Hebrew to see if we want to, so I'm going to take it back to, so the next word, if you're looking up on top, is lachem. And this is where you're going to need to have some of the rules. And I use the Hebrew First Primer, actually use a couple. What I did is I took the Hebrew First Primer, it's a yellow book you can get on Amazon, and I chopped it up because I didn't want the whole book, because a lot of it's about how to say the sound. I took the meat of it, so I carry this around. And there's some rules in there that you're not going to know. So I'm not going to go look for the three-letter root of lachem, because I know that that's actually a preposition, and it means to you, masculine, plural. And I find it interesting. Did my scribe leave? Okay. So if you can put on the next line there, it's going to be to you, masculine, plural. I'm not even going to go down that rabbit trail about why he's always addressing men, but because it is a masculine feminine language, so we're not going to go down that rabbit trail. But there's something about that. So lachem is to you, to plural you. Then the next word is yiyeh, and that one's not in that list right down there where it's given you. It's part of. So if we go to that, that's kind of part of Yod-Heh-Wah's name. Yeah, to you. Yeah. So live by Elohim's thoughts, and then it's to you. Now remember, we haven't put this in an order of a sentence yet. This is very raw, and that's where you got to let the ruach. After we get this raw picture down, then we got to this is where I love having a group setting, because my girlfriend and I do this, and I get stuck, and I'm like, what the heck is trying to say? And she'll go boom, 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 and I'm like, yeah. Like, why does it say frontlets? Okay, I'm getting on a rabbit trail. We figured that out. It's not, you don't put a box there. But it's beautiful, though. The whole frontlet thing is beautiful. I'm just telling you that you can find the beauty in it and not be confused by what it means. So the next word is yeah, and that is to be. But in this case, it is the future tense. So you will be, you will exist. So we're going to put down future, you will do something. And it's part of to exist. It's a verb to be. And in this case, it's you will be, or you will exist in this. And then the next word we see down there, and actually when you look at that, it says every moving thing that liveth shall be meat. So what they did is the shall be is that yeah, that's how they translated it. Shall be, future, you will be. So they kind of did that right. Lecha, le'ach, la. That is to consume. That's that word eat. We're going to go down here and look at it. They translate it as meat again, and it's food. But when you go to be consistent, we're going to use this dictionary to see what the action of that is. So right now, there's no meat. It's not telling you to eat meat. Yeah, and the thing is so we're using this English translation, and it's going, oh, I can eat meat. Okay? I guess my point is if you're going to build your walk around what the English says, I would be careful, because it might not be. So if you're walking around going, well, the word says I can eat meat, make sure that you figured out if that word really said that. Because if you're sharing that and it's making somebody stumble, that's dangerous. I have gotten to the point where when I'm talking, unless I've looked it up in Hebrew, I'm like, I'm not going to tell you what it says. If you think it's what it says, what I'll do is I go back and I go, oh, that is not what it says. So if we go back to achal, which is it's the aleph, lamed, aleph, kaf. I do pronounce the Hebrew a little bit different than the Jews. The Jews do the vav. They do, I don't even know how, I do kaf. I think they do kaf. I do kaf because I believe that Yahweh want the vowels the way they do it. They use the patah and the kamatz. They say the same vowel, but why would we have that? And I think Yahweh wants us to use all of the muscles in our mouth for the frequencies and that's a whole other topic, for the frequencies and the resonance. So I do a little bit different, and sorry if that confuses you. So in here, the action of achal is to consume. That doesn't mean just food. You can consume lots of things, and you'll see that they use that word for consume, and it has nothing to do with food. So let's put down consume. So you will consume. Then the next word is kayarech. And they do have it down here. So it's Strong's 3418. That is a yod, a resh, and a kuf. Are we going to have to do can you move it a little bit so we can fit it on there? So yod, resh, kuf. to cast down. Interesting. Cast down. So the next part of that sentence would be cast down. The action of it. And I guess you could look at grass is cast down. I mean, it's down. It's underneath us. We have to try to figure out how they got green out of cast down by just putting some different vowel pointings in front of it, because that's what they did. There's one thing that we're missing on there. So it's ka-yarech. So the kaf means like or as. When you add it, it's a prefix. So we do actually need to put that in there. So it would be like casting down. Like, as casting down, or like casting down. Okay, so then our next word is asev. And right here, they didn't have a root for it. They say it's herb or green plants. So that's where it's saying green plants. You can eat green plants. It's kind of backing up where we saw first in Bereshit, where it was we can eat plants. But let's take a look at what asev means in our dictionary for action. Asev means to grow independently. So the next word is going to be grow independently. And that's what plants do. So we can see where that would come from. Grow independently. Plants don't need us to do anything. They're everywhere. There was a study that they were flying over somewhere in Africa where it was complete desert. Or they were working somewhere and it was complete desert. Somebody was flying over it, and they told the story where they hit a spring or an aquifer in the middle of the desert. And so they did an experiment, and they irrigated it. They put 1 acre of irrigation and did nothing, and it grew a jungle. So somebody was flying, and they go, what's that jungle down there? Then they turned the water off, and everything disappeared, and they turned the water back on, and all these plants came up. So that we see that it can just grow independently. Where we think it's complete death, there's no water. As soon as you add water, I think that's why Yeshua said, I am the water, I'm the life. It's because that makes things grow independently, or to grow. But so that word we're going to say grow independently. Okay. Now we're to nathati. And that's got some rules in there that's kind of hard. And that is one of the hardest words to parse out. It's hard to tell what the root is. So this is one where you actually have to do, you know how they say in kindergarten to memorize mathematical operation, or you just have to memorize some things. This word, the Hebrew word to give, is one of the hardest words to try to figure out the root of, because it has some weird rules. But I recognize it now because I've been doing this for long enough. So I know where to find the root on this. And anybody here is welcome to call me or Facebook me and say, hey, I've been kind of practicing what you were doing, and I can't figure out what the root of this is. And I can help you as much as I can, but there's sometimes I question if I figured out the right root. And that's why I think we have some translation issues. Even the scholars couldn't really figure out what was the root. And I see places where they picked the wrong root, in my opinion, because of what I see. But so the next word is natati, and that means to give. So we're down here, and it says have I given, and the have I given is part of how those letters are. That tells you have I given. And so they say it's the primitive root, and it's a verb to give, to put, to set. So it is a nun tav, noon, and it means to give over. So put down give over. It just give over. Just give over.
Add to.
Okay, so then it's to give over, and then the next word is that lachem, which is to you, masculine plural, to you men, to you men. On that one where it says to you, put down to you men so that we know it's talking to masculine men. Where we said to you, it would be to you. To you men, yeah.
So is it
No. And that's some of the problem with trying to find root words, is that you might think that that's what that is, but it's not. So to you, we could actually use that in there. We could say bread. Instead of to you men, we could say maybe it's telling us bread. Let's look at lachem. If we really want to stay in that same line of thinking, I just know that that's what they're trying to do. If we look at, and we put in there that bread, instead of to you men, and we put in... So what did they use? They used a lamed kaf. Actually, no, there is no lamed kaf mem, so it's not bread. It's not bread. Okay, so it's to you men. Then we see that to you men again, and then we see this aleph tav. Now, this aleph tav there's some mysteries that are just amazing on that, so I'm not even going to go there. I'm not even going to address that, but if you were to take and use the rule of I either add a hey to the end of it or I double that last letter, if I was to go to aleph tav tav, It means to cut or penetrate. So the action of aleph tav. But in here with that marquee, they're actually using as a direct object. It's trying to tell you what is it directed towards. And then we see kol. And down there, kol, they actually translated it all things. Again, it's that complete everything, all things. So they put down kol. But that could also be voice, because see that little dot on the top? That could actually be a holum, because Jackson was talking about defective writing. This is a problem with the Masoretic scribes, and this can be a problem with gematria. They dropped consonants out, but they put a dot instead. Now, that changes the value of that word, and so there's some problems there. So that could actually be to hear. It could be kol, voice, to hear. So that's complicated there.
In context.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just see what we got here. Complete everything, tread softly, progress, move forward. So as you're moving forward, tread softly, maybe on the grass, I don't know, on the plants and the herbs. Yeah. To exist, living by Elohim's thoughts, to you men, you will consume. I can't read that. Cast down, but it was like casting down, and grow independently, and what? And give over. Okay, so that's where you gotta start going. Okay, bro, what do you guys think? What is that telling? Is that telling you to eat meat?
No.
Okay. So I'm going to use this in my talk about the health about not eating meat. I think if we look at the scriptures, it does not tell us to eat meat. It doesn't give us permission to eat meat. It does tell us to eat plants. It does tell us to eat plants.
Wait a minute now.
They wanted to be able to eat meat because Wa'ikra, Leviticus, in order to do all those temple sacrifices, they had to eat meat. So maybe there's an agenda. That's why they did that, to back that up. I don't know. I'm just speculating, but
here's
what
a
I'm
question
trying.
I have.
Okay.
Then why would Yahweh say? Because I'm looking at Leviticus 11:1 right now, and it says, "And Yahweh spoke to Aaron and Moshe and said, These are the living creatures which you are allowed to eat."
We're going to go look at that. Maybe not here. We might not have time here, but that's where you got to look at it.
Because I'm like, I feel you. And maybe at that time he said, okay, meat is off of the table. But something changed that allowed for humans to consume meat.
Yeah, could it be that there was an agenda that
Wait a minute, hold on, wait a minute.
Was it Elohim that changed, or is it some variety that was changed?
all I'm trying to show you is that be careful making your doctrine, making your choices by just trusting that the English is telling you. Now, maybe the Masoretes changed the Hebrew text.
Right.
It's possible. We'd have to go look. So my next thing that I'm going to be doing, because of Jackson, and thank you, Jackson, is I'm going to go to the Septuagint and use it as another witness to see if the Masoretes did change that. So I'm going to go to the Septuagint as soon as I get my comparative language Bible from Adam Driscoll.
Mainly what the Masoretes did was drop stuff out.
Okay. Well, I know what the Masoretes did was the vowel pointing issue, which changed the gematria, which does have it's huge, and I don't want to go down that rabbit trail. But what I'm saying is that after the flood, so before the flood, we know we were not allowed to eat meat. It never said. Then we thought that after the flood, it's like, well, Yahweh doesn't change. He's not he's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Why all of a sudden after the flood did he say you can eat meat?
He didn't. Doesn't make sense.
So Noah built a vineyard right after he got out.
Yeah, exactly.
No, the dove, I just gave you an example of the desert. The dove found an olive leaf tree. That's why they stayed on the ark until that dove could confirm that there was plants to eat. It must not have been because the olive leaf.
They had strange seed.
Another thing that's interesting along with this stuff, like this whole idea of what do we read into these verses, it's not even there. So in this example, remez is not every living thing and meat not animals, okay? So we have to get rid of the reading in, but we could look back before the flood, we could say, well, see, in the beginning, the Father, slaughtered an animal, gave goat skin. So, and it's just more reading in. You have to look at what it's actually saying, because there's times all over where it's what we read into the text that we're saying this is what it actually says, and it doesn't actually say that. For instance, it never says an animal coats skin on it. It's like, what does the text actually say? What do we read into it say? And we wouldn't even need to get into everything we did here just to see that remez is not really a thing and be animal.
Yeah, you could just take that little bit, but there's a danger in just pulling out. See, I know a lot of people that do a word study, and what they do is they go to the Blue Letter Bible and they look at the one word and they're going, okay, and they leave the rest of the English. But that is dangerous too, because there's so much more to it, and when you're looking at that, there's a different message there. I'm not sure what it is, and it's quite interesting. But I find that we are to tread softly when we progress forward. So I think I haven't done a lot of work on that, but because of the industry that I am in, and I'm trying, my mission is to help set apart believers. I want to actually go answer your question, Danielle. I want to see why did they sacrifice meat in the Levitical priesthood? I have some speculation about why.
It says in the Nazarene Act exactly for good reason. But what does the flood have to do with me? Nothing.
Right.
I don't even believe that the flood was anything. I local event, and if it was a worldwide event, look what Yahweh does with millions and millions of that.
But if you look at that actually backs up. Then he says, "But do not eat flesh with its life, its blood." There we go.
That's common sense, though.
No. You do it all the time, Vero.
No, what are you talking about? You're not going to catch a live animal and eat a live animal.
I gave him a hard time earlier about smoking. I'm going to give you a hard time about eating meat. So
Okay,
I'll
come
tell
on.
you.
Come on.
I'll bring it on, brother.
Come on.
But
You
in
got
love.
the right one today.
But in love.
In Yahad, everybody gets hurt.
That's okay.
Nobody gets criticized except constructive.
Okay, so
Yeah.
here's my issue. Hold on. Here's my issue. To me, we're developing a doctrine and we're saying, okay, no more meat. God said no more meat. To me, that's not what that says. It says that earlier, yes, that was the case. Now that's not the case. And what has happened, it seems to me, it may sound in circles, that we are imposing this doctrine on the people when I'm not sure that's what that says.
All I'm saying right now is so far in the scriptures, he has not instructed us to eat meat.
But by that same token, he didn't say that we can't either.
He can.
I'm looking at Leviticus 11, and that's not what that's telling me. You know what I'm saying?
I have a theory about.
So now do we now throw everything out because it was written by them?
No, we don't.
So, I mean, we can't pick and choose now.
We hit a sensitive spot with Danielle. He's like, hang on to that meat.
I got a question.
All right, go ahead.
What happened in the Exodus? They were coming back to the land, and they just hungered for meat.
Oh yes,
They just hungered for meat. But yes, they had all these cattle.
That's right.
Why didn't they eat those?
Because Yahweh was trying to teach them about garden piety. It wasn't about meat because they had cattle.
Yeah.
It was about Shabbat garden piety during that discipleship process.
Or maybe they had animals that didn't eat them. They used their hide, their milk, their.
Wait.
Let me just say that.
No, you're good.
Here's an interesting discovery right here.
You're good. No, you got a good
Just
point.
listen to this instead of arguing. Listen to what the Septuagint says. I'm just surprised to hear it.
Very same verse.
Which one? Let's hear it.
And every reptile which living eat for
Ew!
I have given all things to you as the green herb.
I can eat sushi eel again.
I can eat gator tail.
That might be a situation where the
Gator
Septuagint.
But wait a minute.
It's like another fillet.
Because why would we want to eat a reptile? We know that.
Exactly, they're not clean.
I know.
Exactly. So
Okay. Here's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to develop anybody's doctrine right here, okay?
Right.
I'm just saying.
No, this is a healthy discussion.
I'm trying to show you how I use the tools out there available for my own walk.
Wait.
Okay. For my walk, I see the scriptures telling me that meat's not okay. And I also get it backed up by what I see in the health industry.
Mm-hmm.
Every person that has high cholesterol eats a lot of meat. High cholesterol kills you.
Then that's what we need to say. We need to say, look, eating meat, if you're going to eat meat, understand this, that, and the other. But by that same token, let's not say that God said it was against the Torah to eat meat. Let's not say that.
Okay, I'm going to cut it off right here for a second. Does anybody have any questions on the use of the tools?
No, the tools are cool.
We get to the juncture after a pretty incredible exegesis of the text The dissenter, instead of coming up with a counter interpretation, puts forth a reference to his own experience in doing this, as though that were proof enough. We will continue this analysis later when we have a little more time to find out whether the Action Hebrew analysis of the text wins out over 15 years of doing this. Thank you for listening to Jackson Snyder Presents.